We're here to answer your questions again. This is part 2. Last week we did part 1 about answering your questions, mostly about the video about how to add friends, associates, and neighbors to your Ancestry.com account. So we are going to continue with that right now. Hey, just a quick reminder before we get started to subscribe so that you don't miss a thing. Don't forget there's a newsletter and a Facebook page. And, well, there's also the website where you'll find everything in the world of genealogy TV at genealogytv.org. If this is your first time here, my name is Connie Knox, a lifelong genealogist, here to help you go further, faster, and factually with your family research. All right, let's get started. Well, as a continuation of more questions from the same video, how to add friends, associates, and neighbors to Ancestry.com, SBA wrote, "Love this. I have a few folks that have foster parents that I could use this on. I would be interested in seeing more about how you keep your notes that you briefly showed us on the 8 pages of Christopher Madsen. It's Madsen, sorry. Is this the same stuff I would find on Ancestry's timeline? If so, what is the benefit of keeping separate typed up notes with footnoted citations? I'm struggling with trying to keep and start research log and notes. I've got a couple notebooks with notes, two half-hearted attempts at a log, and no way to really go back and find what I've already done. What a mess. What is the simple, easy way to track all of this? Maybe you have already done a video on this. There are many options, as I've seen others' videos, but they don't seem to work for me. I'd be interested in your approach to this." Okay, great questions. There's a lot there, so we're going to break this down into a couple different pieces for you. So the quick and dirty answer to your question, is this the same stuff as on the Ancestry timeline? Yes and no. And your comment about citations. Don't get me wrong, I love Ancestry. I do. I really do. But I'm not a fan of their way they do source citations. So I do them myself in my own research notes. So let's break this down, though, a little bit into how to answer your questions. Okay, here we go. And I really love the fact that you asked all these questions about research notes. It's something I get asked a lot. And I really appreciate you asking in such great detail, because it's a good refresher for everybody. So here we go. I would be interested in seeing more about how you keep your notes that you briefly showed us with the 8 pages of Christopher Madsen. Is this the same stuff you would find in Ancestry's timeline? If so, what is the benefit of keeping separate typed up notes with footnote citations? So let me explain. So why keep separate research notes? To control your own research is one of the major reasons why I keep my own research notes. I have total control of it. I own it. I have to not worry about somebody stealing it, changing it, marking it up, whatever. Also, keep in mind that, well, you can keep your own backups in the cloud. You're not at the mercy of another service or a software. I use Ancestry as a secondary, actually a third, tertiary backup, but not my primary. So keep that in mind when you're creating your research notes and your tree in general. Family search is a collaborative tree, so others can change your work, so that's not an option. Some research notes may be private or sensitive, so that might be another reason. So if you have a sensitive situation in your family that you don't want the world to see, where are you going to keep that? So if you keep a separate set of research notes on your desktop or in your computer, as opposed to a different set of notes on Ancestry, in my opinion, why do that? I have one set of research notes for every ancestor. That's it. Easy peasy, clean and simple, but it has everything in it that I need. So this is Connie's 100-year rule, and this is another reason for keeping separate research notes. So the 100-year rule is this. Will your storage medium be around in 100 years? Let's think about that for a minute. Just soak that in. You and I will be long dead and gone, okay? But will your research notes survive? Think about the medium in which you are writing your research notes. So are your research notes in Word? Are they on Ancestry? Are they on a piece of software? Think about that for a minute. Can you guarantee that the software you are using today will still be in use 100 years from now? So if you're typing all your research notes in a piece of software and it resides nowhere else, you might want to rethink that. Think about VHS video, Polaroid film. Technology changes. So you need to have your hard-earned, hard-worked research in a place that is going to have the best chance of surviving. And that, you know, ultimately could be a printed document or a digital document. But, you know, I'm kind of going for digital documents because paper documents don't always survive. So think about longevity. All right, so I choose Microsoft Word for a reason. The popularity means that the odds of convertibility is likely in the future. So down the road, even if Microsoft Word is not around, because it is so popular and so easy to convert to Notepad or other text formats, the odds are very good that it's going to survive. So functionality in source citations is another reason why I use Word. And again, we talked briefly about the fact that I write my own source citations. I find, and again, I love Ancestry, but I find using their source citation function there is incredibly time consuming and difficult to use. I should do a whole video on how to just do source citations in Word because it's once you get it down, it's pretty easy. I use dictation a lot. So if I have any document that I want to transcribe, whether it be an obituary, whether it is a will in that old handwritten script, I dictate it into my microphone and then I go back and fix it, because dictation's never perfect, but it certainly saves, you know, the potential for carpal tunnel syndrome down the road because we type too much. But I certainly can create notes really quickly, including my research notes, even census reports. When I'm typing my research notes, I will say, okay, you know, I always start with the date. So let's say it's the 1900 census. I will actually put the date for the 1900 census in there, and, you know, the state and the county, and label it as US Census. And then I will actually read line 26, family number 75, comma, you know, house number 21, comma, and then the name of the household, comma, he's a male, comma, he's white, comma, he's 21 years old, comma, and I will read that into the microphone and I will dictate the entire thing. And there's a reason for that. That's a whole other conversation. But by doing that, you are really hyper-focused on the details that are in the documents. I do the same thing with birth, marriage, death documents, everything. And then I put that information into my research notes so that it's there. And then I put the source citation as a footnote as to where that document came from. And we'll talk a bit more about that in a minute. Filing is another reason I use Microsoft Word, is because of the ease of filing and its spell check functionality. I can't spell worth diddly squat. Okay, and the fact that it has the ability to record macros. If you're not familiar with macros, I use these a lot for source citations. For example, you can use in Microsoft Word, you can create, and it's literally a record and playback function. So you can create a source citation in your footnotes for the 1900 census as a generic thing. And that, again, should probably be a whole other video. But you can, like, start the recorder, type, you know, your source citations. The way I do it is properly based on evidence explained. And so I type that in, and then I stop the recording. Then next time I have a 1900 census that I need to footnote, guess what? I go up to the macro and I hit play, and it goes, and it dumps it in there really quick. And then all I have to do is go in and change the things that need to be changed. They change the county, change the, you know, the area, all the little details with regard to the source citation that have changed. But the format is down, it's right, and it is proper. So it saves me a ton of time. So recording macros is another reason why I use Microsoft Word. All right, so you wanted to know more about how I do the research notes, and this one again is from Christopher Madsen. So one of the things that I do is I create a template. I'm all about making my life easy. So when I create my research notes, I have a template that I use. It's a blank template. I use it over and over and over again. It is my master. So I open up the master and I do a save as the first time I'm ever going to do a new set of research notes for my ancestors. So in this case, these are research notes for Christopher Madsen. I realize you cannot read it because it's very small on the screen, but I do put a header in there, and it basically says research notes for Christopher Madsen. It's that simple. I also put a footer in there, and the footer has my contact information. It's my name, it is my contact information, and the date. Sometimes I'll put the date that it was updated. It just depends on the document. I'm constantly updating it. Sometimes I forget to update the footer, but that's that. Research notes for Christopher Madsen. All right, so here's the quick and dirty rules for how I do research notes. I've done it this way forever. I have fine-tuned this over time. You do your research notes in chronological order. Yes, it is similar to the way that the timeline works in Ancestry, but as you can see, there's a lot more detail here than what you'll ever find on the Ancestry software. Plus, again, I own the notes. I know where they are. Nothing has changed. Nothing has gotten lost. I don't think Ancestry will ever lose your data. I think they have a bazillion backups, but this is way more detail than the average public would probably want to see. Anyway, so I have, you know, the 4th March 1873, Chris Sales from Svenborg, and you get the idea. Then it's all in chronological order. I bold the dates so that I can find them quickly. So why do I do this? I do it this way because as I am creating the next research question, because if you're really doing your research properly, you're not necessarily chasing those leafy hints that are out there. You know, to me, that's just entertainment. That's just like mindless wandering through the tree and having fun. But if you are really focused on a research question and you want to figure out how something happened or who the father is of somebody or whatever, then you're creating a research question and you're creating a research plan. And we'll talk about that more in a minute. But you're creating a research plan, and in your research plan, you're saying, these are the places I'm going to look. Well, if you're trying to resolve a problem that has a date specific, like you're trying to say, why, you know, where is this guy in 1870, let's say, then you can jump right to this part of the research notes and go, okay, this is what we know so far. In 1865, he exists in this document. 1873, we see him sailing, so we know from point A to point B, you know, he's still in Denmark in 1865, but in 1873, he sails for America. So now you can go, okay, well, you know, as you start doing your homework in Denmark, you start realizing, well, wait a minute, there's maybe an 1871 census record that you could go look for. That goes into your research plan. So I keep these in chronological orders. I date them first, then the subject, and then the details. Now, am I perfect? No. Do I source citation everything? I should, but do I? Have I? Over 40 some years of research? No. But, you know, we do our best. Okay, so here is where I'm demonstrating in Word how you can insert a footnote. It is on the reference tab, as you can see at the very, very top. It says references, and then you can hit insert note. And you can see that it puts a little number 4. Now, this is another huge reason for using Word, because let's say that you do find some more documents between 1865 and 1873, and you also source those citations. That little number 4 that you see where it says Steamship Nevada here, that will update. If I add 2 more source citations in between between 1865 and 1873, and I put source citations with those, they will automatically update in Word. So you don't have to retype these little numbers all the time. It automatically does it for you. And by the way, I like to use footnotes as opposed to endnotes. Endnotes go at the end of a document, and you often will see that when people are writing books. You want to use footnotes because footnotes are on the same page as your notes for that section. Because if somebody copies just that one page, you want that footnote and the source information to go with it. Okay, so here's an example of the footnote from that previous section there, and it shows this came from the Danish archives. And in this case, it was written in Danish, so I had to translate it, each section of it. That's what you see in the brackets there, is the English translation. Research notes for tips when using Word. Use the dictation tool to transcribe old documents. Share your document by exporting it to PDF to prevent people from changing your document. Use headers and footers and page numbers. Insert images and transcribe documents with transcriptions into them to identify them. I do this, I'll do little screenshots of an image. I won't put the full image in a Word document. It doesn't really work that well. But at least it's a reference, especially on wills, because that old handwriting, sometimes, you could be going through images after image, and it just, I've got hundreds of these pages of this old handwriting. If you create a copy, insert a copy of the image with the transcription in your documents, it really helps to find those images later on when you're looking for them. Use macros to help record source citations. Okay, the second part of your question was, I'm struggling with trying to keep and start a research log and notes. I've got multiple notebooks with notes, 2 half-hearted attempts at a log, and no way to really go back and find what I've already done. What a mess. What is a simple, easy way to keep track of all this? That is a loaded question, but I will do my best. Okay, so I keep everything in file folders, and everything has the same process. So, surnames are in bold letters, followed by the given name. So these are file folders, not files, okay? So these are the folders that I keep. And this is all in alphabetical order, okay? So you keep a folder by surname and then given name. Then, and I always, for research notes, it starts with the number 1. I do that so that the file rises to the top, because here is the answer to all of the questions, really, when it comes to this subject with research notes. Your research notes, in my opinion, are the number 1 document in everything you have. You may have birth certificates, death certificates, census records, all kinds of stuff. Your research notes is the most important document in your file. So it starts with a number 1. So it rises to the top because you're always going to be changing that document. You're constantly doing more research on that, and that's always easy to find. So it starts with the number 1, then the surname, then the given name. And then I usually put a dash research notes because my research log is done the same way, but he gets a number 2. Research logs, that's a whole other conversation we'll get into here in a second, but same thing. I usually bold the surname just so it grabs my attention, and then the given name, and then a dash research log. So I do the same thing with documents. So here I've got, but it doesn't have a number in front of it this time. So it's the surname, given name, and dash birth certificate with the year or whatever the document may be. So here's a marriage certificate 1934, an obituary from 1956. So when you start looking at it in the list view in your electronic folders, it all lines up nicely. It's nice and neat. You can do the same thing with photos. Okay. So here's an example for Christopher Madsen. You can also do a file folder for groups. And I'll do this because not every document is for just one person, and I don't want to copy this. Like if you've got, say, a registry from a wedding where there's a whole bunch of family members who have put their name down in that registry, you have a copy of it for your documents. And so what I will do is I'll create a folder for the couple and call it, you know, here it's the Madsen, Christopher, and Laura family group. So anything like group photographs where you got the whole family together at a family reunion, those kind of things, they'll go in the family group folder, usually by couple. You can put group photos, group documents like Bible pages, marriage registries, passenger lists where there's a whole bunch of families that are traveling together. All right, so here are the rules for my one and only system for research notes. So the rules are this. Keep one separate set of research notes for every ancestor. Now you can occasionally do research notes for a family group, but I don't recommend it. A lot of times if I have the same information that I want to go into several people in a family group, I'll just cut and paste that piece of information in each one of their documents so that it's everywhere, so that when I'm working on that one ancestor, or 100 years from now, going back to the 100-year rule, somebody else has that document and maybe they only have one person in that family group. That piece of information, let's say it was from a census record where there were 4 or 5 people named, I'll cut and paste that same information into each one of their research notes so that 100 years from now, if only one of those documents is important to somebody, they're looking at it, they got that information there. So one separate set of research notes for every ancestor. Name it with one surname, given name, dash research notes. File it under the same nomenclature surname. So the file name would be, in my case, Madsen. That's the folder, excuse me. The folder name is Madsen. Then the file under that is Madsen Christopher. Keep one clean master set of research notes that contains everything you found. Let me back up. One set of research notes that contains everything you found. This is not what you didn't find. This is what you found. These are my rules. This has worked for me for 40 years. You can do it however you want, but this is what works for me, okay? So all of those little slips of paper, and believe me, I'm right there with you, all those little slips of paper that you have collected over the years, you were with somebody and you wrote something down real quick, and you stuffed it in your purse and you came back home, and now you've got this little piece of paper, and then you went to the archives and you wrote something down, and okay, so you got all these little slips of paper, right? All those little slips of paper that you found information on, you transfer that information carefully so that you don't make a mistake, and you trash that slip. Unless it's really an important document, but if it's just something you wrote down, a reference note at the library, or, you know, some little piece of information I usually trash the slip. I don't keep all those little slips of paper. I put them in my research notes because I know those research notes are going to survive, because I'm going to make them survive. Okay, so photos, I copy and insert if it is applicable to the research. So I don't, believe me, we've all taken 100 photographs over time that you don't want to keep in all your research notes, only if it's important to the research process. Document information only. So in other words, you don't put the full transcription of the will in there. You put the abstracted information in there. Same thing with a census record. You're not going to put 10 pages worth of census information in there as you're doing your fan club research. You're going to create an abridged version of that and stick it in there. Simple source citations for every document or slice of data. Now, what I mean by a slice of data is this. If you have birth information on somebody and the birth date came from one location and the birthplace came from a different location, that's 2 slices of the pie. That is 2 pieces of data. And so you need to source each one. So if you got the date from a Bible and you got the place from a census record, you're going to source those separately within the same sentence. So he was born on this day at this place. Right next to the date, you're going to put that little, you're going to insert the source citation for that. And then on the place, you're going to put an insert of a source citation, a footnote in there for that piece of data and the source that it came from. I did a whole other video on my version of source citations, which is kind of a stepping stone to building professional source citations, but I call it the who, what, where, when, and when, why, and how, so that you can create source citations. A lot of professionals will tell you you don't have to write perfect source citations. You just have to be able to create a source citation so that if somebody is retracing your steps, they can find it again without ever knowing you. Or ever talking to you. So if you create a source citation that says, I found this at the National Archives in this book on this page number, paragraph number 2, that is a great source citation. That's, somebody can retrace that. You should include the address where that archive was. Now, you know, do you want to include a web address? No. Web addresses change. Web pages, again, think about the 100-year rule. Those websites are not going to be around in 100 years. A few of them might. Some of the big ones might. But for the most part, if you're just putting a web address in as a source citation, you might also want to do the who, what, where, when, and when, why, and how. And I'll explain what that is. It is who it is, what it is, where it was found, when it was created, when it was found. So you have 2 whens, when it was created and when it was found, why it matters. These are my rules now, okay? And how you can find it again. So if you have those elements in your source citations, you should be good to go. There is a whole other video on this that I did earlier. I will leave links for that video in the show notes. I say save early, saved often, and put a backup in the cloud. Please put a backup in the cloud. Now, you can also use Ancestry as another backup or whatever you're using. I personally do not use, I use Family Search as a tool for research. I do have a tree up there, but you know, it's a collaborative tree, so people are changing it all the time. So I just use it for clues. Okay, now, this is Connie's one and only system for research plan/log. The reason I say that is because it's one document. I do not use a research plan and then a research log. Now this is where a lot of people get may have a variety of opinions. I don't use research logs as often as others do. And there's a reason for that. First of all, you should be retracing your steps every now and then. I've gone back 10 years later and things have changed. So if I've gone back and looked at something that I researched from a research log 10 years ago, and new material has come about. There's new information online. There's all kinds of new information. So I don't know that you always want to just like have this hard and fast rule that, oh, I've already, here's my research log. I've already looked in this place. I'm not going to look again. Now that may be a different opinion from some people, because some people say you're wasting your time looking there again. I do this on a case-by-case basis. I do it based on a research plan, based on a research question. So if I'm looking for, I don't know, a specific person in a specific place and time, I'm going to create a research plan that says I should be looking in these 20 places. I don't know what it is, okay? But I should be looking in these places. Then I'm going to create a research plan that is also a research log. So I will do my research ahead of time, and I will go and create the call sheet everywhere I should be looking. And I'm going to show you an example of that here in a second. But then I can also put my results right next to each one of these items. I will also prioritize it. Every one of them is slightly different depending on where I'm going and what I'm doing. So here are my rules for the research plan and log. Keep one separate master research log file for every ancestor and sometimes family groups. Yes, and these are temporary research logs based on your plan, and you can actually create one document with separate tabs. So if you have a research question one day and you create a research log for that, and I do these in Excel, so this may be confusing, but you create your research question, you create your research log / plan. It's one sheet, and I've got a template I can share with you. And then you go do your research, right? And you put your results in. Well, you can create a new tab along the bottom for whatever purpose you want. So you could then duplicate that into a new tab and then add to it. Or if you're going to a different repository, I usually use them for specific locations. For example, if I'm going to the National Archives, if I'm going to the North Carolina Archives, if I'm going to the local library, if I'm going to Salt Lake City. The ones I build for Salt Lake City are quite extensive because I'm trying to get a whole lot of work done in a quick period of time. So I will create tabs based on location. I do a lot of location work that way. So you create your research questions. You can do these by research trips. Keep one clean master research notes, research note file that contains everything you found. That's just my rules. Now, even if you don't find something, that doesn't mean that it's not there. So I don't really harp a lot on what's not found. I do write that into my research notes, though. That is important because negative evidence is evidence. So if you expect someone to be in a certain place at a certain time and they're not there at the time you're looking, that's one of two things. Either they've moved on and they're really not there and you should be looking somewhere else, or you just didn't find it, the needle in the haystack. So keep that in mind. All of those little slips of paper, could be places to look, that you've created from various little notes. I get rid of all that stuff. That just clutters my brain. I want to focus on the research question, and when you have a clean set of research notes, and it takes years to really create these good quality research notes and research plans and logs. I am not as big of an advocate on research logs as some people are, because I do believe that you need to really focus on each research question more importantly than the research log. So those research questions lead to research plans, which then creates a log. Then once you find what you're looking for, you can keep that log, but you're also going to transfer that information to your research notes, because what did I say? The most important document in your entire file is the research notes. Number one, uno. one research plan and log. Again, one file is what I'm saying. You can have multiple tabs for multiple research trips, multiple things, but for each ancestor, you should have one file. I use Excel most of the time for my research logs and plans. In the past, I have tried using Word, but I always end up going back to Excel, Microsoft Excel. So, you asked, maybe, SBA, we're still working on your questions. Maybe you've already done a video related to this. There are many options I've seen as other videos, but they don't seem to work for me. I'd be interested in your approach. Yes, I have created other videos, and here they are. I have one. These are from some of the earliest videos I've done on the channel. One is called Staying Organized with Charts and Software. It may or may not be applicable to exactly what you're asking about. The other is called Easy Breezy Source Citations. This is along the same lines as what I was referring to earlier with the who, what, where, when, and when, why, and how theory. Once you get that down in your head, you won't ever forget it. How to create a great research notes. This is more of the same information. In fact, it uses a lot of the same documents that we just talked about. And research logs, a little bit more about how to create detailed research logs. I did not go into a lot of detail here about those research logs, but I will try and leave you a template that you can use. But it's pretty simple. I mean, it just creates like your research question, the areas that you're going to look, and then the results found. It's pretty easy. So that is what I have. If you have more questions, you might want to consider joining our Genealogy TV Insiders group. It meets on the third Thursday of every month. There are only 5 slots in that. There are a few of those already taken. So if that's something you're interested in, this is where we get live chat, video back and forth, and we can talk to each other and ask questions in a group setting. And then I also have individual coaching where we talk about things. These are not like classes where there's a subject every week, although I do try and hit a subject a lot of times in the group coaching. But it's really more of, hey, what kind of questions do you need help with? And as a group, we try and brainstorm the answers for everybody in the group. So that's the Genealogy TV Insiders third Thursday session. If you're interested, you can go to genealogytv.org and go to the Insiders tab, or just type genealogytv.org/insiders. And you'll get to a full information page on that. That's a lot of information for you. I hope you enjoyed that. If so, please give me a thumbs up. And you know what? Please share it about. If you found this really helpful, please share it about on your Instagram and social media platforms. Facebook, don't forget we have the newsletter. All the links for everything we talked about are in the show notes below. And, well, it's time for you to go find your ancestors and maybe create some research notes along the way. All right, until next time, keep on climbing your family tree.